Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Sports on a Positive Tip. It's been a minute for us, vacation and such. But Kenny, this is, by the way, this is where we have conversations at the intersection of sports and faith. Kenny, are we ever going to see our two football teams be consistently good?
Not this year.
Oh, man. It's still early, though. It's still early. All right, we'll talk. The Mets essentially fired Buck Showalter. Would he fit in as a Yankee manager?
I think he would, but I think a better position would be for him, I should say her.
Okay.
I think I have another position in mind.
Okay, I can't wait to hear that. Damian Lillard goes to the Bucks. Boy, oh boy, were they unhappy in Miami.
Yeah, that's a whole wild thing there, huh?
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about it. And baseball playoffs started yesterday. Listen, did you get your seat in Tampa? I mean, there's good seats available. Did you see? Did you see the? I mean, I can't believe that. And they're going into a new stadium. We got to talk about that.
Yeah, their lowest I saw attendance since like 2010 in a playoff game.
I mean, that's ridiculous. When you and there's cities that would die for a team like that, that they are consistently good every year. Anyway, you ready to talk about it? Because we also got to start with Trevor Bauer. You ready to talk about all this?
Let's do it.
All right.
This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. How do funded startup founders attract prospects and talent? Podcast interviews. How do entrepreneurs with exits find new deals? Podcast interviews. How do C-suite execs differentiate in crowded markets? Podcast interviews. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. Click the link in the show notes for a special offer. Celebrate good conversation.
Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny Squared.
with Sports on the Positive Tip Podcast. It's been a minute for us as a vacation on my part and just schedules and such, but we are back. Kenny, how the heck are you?
I'm good. It's been an interesting day here, but
Yeah.
that's because we had the water company fixing our water. So
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of this podcast, I want you to give a minute or so on the tavern because we haven't really talked about that, and it'll be good for our audience that listens to know what that is and what it does and all that good stuff, as you are the CEO of the tavern, which is great. And by the way, guys, anybody who knows, no, it's not a tavern where you can pull belly up to the bar and get a couple of beers. No, not that type of tavern. All right. Listen, we got a lot to cover, so let's jump in first. I think we'll start with the serious stuff first. And Trevor Bauer, we talked about him a lot, and we haven't for a while because really hasn't been in the news for a while. His lawsuit against his accuser and his accuser's lawsuit against him both got dropped. And once that got dropped, then the gloves were off, and he was able to share a lot of stuff that he did, I believe, yesterday or the day before. You had sent it over to me, and I watched. It was probably about a 5-6 minute video. I watched every second of it, of what he said. He's still not, and this is just my opinion, he's still not, in my opinion, a very likable guy. But in terms of him getting a job back in Major League Baseball, I'm curious to hear your thoughts and your thoughts on the video and just this whole just awful saga, which has kind of now closed at least this chapter of it, but I'm anxious to see what the next chapter is going to bring. What were your thoughts?
I was a little surprised that he had so much against her like that. Because it kind of seemed like at first it was just like it kind of seemed like, yes, this person was looking for a money grab, but also not like it seemed like he wasn't exactly in the right. Now it kind of just seems like, to me, one of the bigger takeaways I take from this is that you gotta be careful who you sleep with.
Yeah.
There's a reason why God says save for marriage.
Yeah.
Because that's really what exposed him. And okay, live whatever life. I don't necessarily say give you the thumbs up approval for that, but it's a good example of how where it says in Corinthians, bad company corrupts good character.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to be careful with the people that you're around, because it does seem like this lady was like, I have an opportunity to kind of not necessarily scam this guy, but really like take some money and put his name through the mud. Because really, he could have, like, everything probably would have gone a little bit, like, yeah, probably people would have found out about some sort of settlement, but like he could have easily made it go away with just, oh, I'll give you $250,000 so that you can leave me alone. But
He stuck to
he
his
was
guns.
adamant the whole time.
Yeah, he stuck to his guns. Let me ask you, well, let me just make a quick observation, a couple of questions for you. One observation is there's a little bit of a contradiction there, because he did say, he showed the video that she had originally posted, which I think I had saw, where she's laying in bed next to him and she winks or whatever, right? And there's no bruises on her. And he points that out yesterday, but yet I thought he admitted that they did have this rough time in bed. You know what I mean? I thought he admitted that you know, it was consensual, but he insinuated yesterday, everything else was pretty direct except that, I thought, where he kind of insinuated, he said there's no bruises on her. So what, did she do that herself? I didn't quite get that. What did you think about that?
Yeah, that's the part that to me is still a little
Yeah.
sketchy.
Yeah.
Because, like, I mean, you got to be some type of crazy to punch yourself like that
Yeah.
just to like bring upon a lawsuit and whatnot. But
Yeah.
also, like, when you're dating someone that's worth $50 million and you're looking to take advantage of that, maybe that is what you do. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does. I think that's the part of the story that still seems to me very murky.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
where did the bruises come from?
Yeah. Everything else was very straightforward, right? I think showing those text messages, it's obvious to me that the police probably saw those text messages, and probably one of the reasons why he never did get charged, you know, with a crime for this. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. I think based on this, like, based on what he posted, like, any type of criminal charges are really hard to bring, because then it becomes very much like I mean, a lot of times in general, a lot of like sexual assault things are, or physical assault things are, he said, she said. But like when you have that type of hard evidence, it's hard to say otherwise.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, like, it's hard to prove that he did it, and that's really what it comes down to, is a sense of proof.
Yeah. All right. Your opinion now. Do you think that Major League Baseball and the Dodgers acted too quickly here?
Now, I understand that it's like it's hard, because if you're looking at it from the perspective of this dude got suspended and he was an innocent man, sure, yeah, that stinks. But what if it was the opposite? Too often in sports, we've seen the opposite.
Yeah.
Ray Rice is the number one example of that, where he gets suspended for 2 games for like brutal physical assault.
Yeah.
So I don't think they were too harsh. I do think, though, that he deserves another chance. And I think someone will take a flyer on him. He's still a really, like, he's still a good pitcher. And especially if he's in like a low pressure situation, we had said a place like a Kansas City, Oakland probably wouldn't, because they don't pay anybody.
Right.
But
Right.
like say like a Pittsburgh, the Cardinals,
Yeah.
Texas, if they go far in the playoffs, might take a flyer as like an end of the rotation type of guy, something like that.
Yeah. There's been players that have been on teams that I'm sure that have been unlikable, right? Albert Bell comes to mind. Possibly these days, Manny Machado, even, you know. And so Bauer still, even in this video where he's defending himself and he's saying all the right things, again, this is just my opinion, he still seems to come off as unlikable to me. And I think one of the things that you and I talked about was that he needed back then as things were unfolding. I remember last spring training where you and I was saying, would he get a shot? I think we both agreed that he needs some advocates in his corner, right? And I think the name that we kept talking about was the Terry Francona, somebody well respected, a Buck Showalter, someone like that, well respected throughout baseball. Francona probably made more sense because he did pitch for him, even though Francona got angry at him when he threw the ball over the fence and everything. But if Francona had come out and said, hey, listen, I think a team should take a chance on about his ship has sailed here in Cleveland, but I think a team can take a chance on him. He's a good teammate. He works hard. He's a good, excellent pitcher, obviously. Then I think a team would have done that. Nobody's come out in his corner. Do you think, and I still think that needs to be done in order for him to get another job in baseball. Do you think somebody will come out and back him up? And because you just said you think somebody will sign him, and I agree with you on the cities. I'm just not sure that even those cities will take a chance on him.
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't think anyone's coming to bat for him.
Yeah.
Because nobody has, and if any place would really take a good shot on him, wouldn't it be the Dodgers? Like,
Wow.
You've got great locker room guys. Like, everyone loves Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman. Dave Roberts is like a very well-respected manager. Clayton Kershaw, like, you got guys there, but nobody, when he was suspended, said anything.
Yeah.
And to me, that is still a little bit telling, because I do agree. Even like when he was explaining the facts and as it was going on, like, it did still seem like he was a little bit arrogant. And like, I understand, like, I'll never be in that type of situation. First, making $50 million is my net worth. That's not happening.
Yeah.
But then also, like, having someone at that point where they're trying to throw your name in the mud and you cannot get a position in like the top of your field because of it.
Yeah.
It's hard. But at the same time, yeah, I don't think he has many people that are like really, really fighting hard for him. I don't know if that will happen.
Yeah, and the shame of it is that it really strongly looks like in the eyes of the law, he's innocent. He's probably guilty of some bad judgment, as you said. Consenting adults will be consenting adults, but I think you said this, that doesn't make it right. But I just think that his past in terms of not being a great guy, being arrogant, even a little thing I remember, I mean, how close were the Mets to signing him? Very, very close, right? And he sends out the picture on Twitter of him in a Met uniform. Oh, psych, even something like that, is not, so nobody on the Mets is going to say, hey, we should go out and get this guy. Last quick thing, you were right. You said it a few years ago or a year ago now that the Dodgers would have been the best fit for him to come back. At the time, even the Dodgers still had Justin Turner, who's a respected veteran guy. But you just named Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Clayton Kershaw. That would be the best locker room for him to probably be in, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
No, because like, also you think about the Dodgers, and I mean, I think he was still supposed to be there this year, or at least had like a club option or a player option.
Yeah.
And I know this is kind of related, but like, you think about it, the Dodgers are probably like a slight step behind the Braves, right? Like, the Braves, I think, are considered the favorites.
Oh,
do you think if Trevor Bauer and his 30-something starts and 3.15 ERA could have put them in that position to be the top guy? Because they've had a lot of pitching issues this year. Like, they have Buehler, Clayton Kershaw's old, so like, I do wonder. And I think even if he is like, if that's the best spot for him, I do wonder if they think, especially if they don't win the title. I mean, they still could. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
But if they don't win the title, even if he came knocking at the door, I wonder if they were like, well, if you hadn't been doing your escapades, then we would have won maybe 2 titles with you.
Well, yeah, it's a great point. They would be right there. See, I honestly, this year, I don't give them a shot against the Braves if it gets to that. We never know. We're going to get to the playoffs in a second. We never know, but obviously they're the 2 best teams in the National League, right? So theoretically, they should be playing for the NLCS. I don't give the Dodgers a shot if it comes to that, and we don't know if it will because of their pitching. I think hitting wise, the Dodgers match right up with the Braves, but because of their pitching, I give the Braves a significant edge. If Bauer had been on that Braves staff, then we're leveling the playing field a little bit more, last visual, and then we'll jump into I think we'll recap Mets Yanks real quick and then jump into the playoffs. But think about this. If somebody signs him, they've got to probably have a little press conference, and some GM and manager have got to sit next to him and say, we believe in this guy. And that's just hard for me to envision, and it's not so much because of what happened. It's more his past. And then this happens, even though he's innocent under the law, it looks like, right? And I guess it's comfortable to say that because he's never charged, and he's got a mountain of it. If you watch that video, and it's not hard to find, if you just Google his name, you'll find it. He's got a mountain of evidence that shows that, for the most part, it looks like he didn't do it, except, like I said, that contradiction he makes sort of towards the end, where he shows a video of her and he said, see, there's no bruises on her face, but some GM and manager have to stand next to him, sit next to him at a press conference. That's hard to imagine. Let's say just skip that altogether, bring him in on an unguaranteed contract under the radar in spring training and see what happens. But I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like,
yeah,
especially like, let's say late February, pitcher goes down with Tommy John, and then they sign him to like a minor league spring training invite type of thing.
Yeah.
Because also, like,
yeah,
I mean, at this point, he's 2 years removed from playing Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
Like, I know he was in the Japanese league, but also that's really hard to come back. We've seen players do it.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do.
It is hard to do. All right, let's move forward. If there's any developments, I certainly would still love to talk about that. It's a fascinating case in no good way at all, but it's fascinating to talk about, definitely where life and sports intersect. And I guess we'll see. All right. What's your final assessment on the Yankees season here? You did end with Frankie Montas pitching. I didn't know that until you let me know that. I think that's great that he worked hard to come back this year, and even though he got in, just a game. But Carlos Rodon, I don't know what to make of him. So many disappointments in the Yankee season, as in the Mets. So I mean, we could go on for the next 2 hours and talk about the Mets disappointments, but give us your quick assessment on the Yankees, and give us a highlight or two that has you looking forward to next year, and where do they go from here?
Well, let's start with the positive. I think a few big highlights. Number one, Garrett Cole.
Yeah.
Probably going to win the Cy Young Award.
Yeah.
He had an excellent year. He capped off his year with a complete game shutout against a team in the playoffs, a team fighting for playoff positioning. So I think his year was fantastic. Another one, Aaron Judge was on a 55 home run pace throughout this year. I mean, he only played, I think it was 110 games or something like that. Still, he had an excellent year. I think a few guys that have some building blocks that makes you excited about next year. Michael King, he had a 1.09 ERA in about 7 starts after they switched him from reliever to starter.
That's great.
So it looked like they might have found something there. Clark Schmidt, who wasn't even in the opening day rotation, he ended up with 32 starts, I believe. Had a good year. Kind of petered off a little bit at the end, but good year. Gleyber Torres also had a very underrated year. There are 2 Yankees that played more than 20 games, that finished with an OPS plus of over 100, which is above average hitter. Aaron Judge and Gleyber Torres. So that was great. I think one of the bigger things that people will, and I feel like the front office might lean on a little bit, is the Yankees had a lot of injuries. And like, I know that's still not really an excuse because some of the guys they relied on still didn't hit well. Looking at Stanton, DJ LeMahieu for the first half, a lot of those type of guys. But like I said, two guys of an OPS plus of over 100 is not good. But also what's kind of crazy, I was looking at all of the playoff teams, and all of them had at least 5 players play 120 or more games, which means like, I mean, if you're playing 120 games, missing about a month. The Yankees have had 3. They had Anthony Volpe, also a guy that built, and I think people will be excited about him next year.
Yep.
Gleyber Torres, both played over 150, by the way, both of those two guys. And DJ LeMahieu played about 133. Mm-hmm. Everybody else, less than that. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of tells a lot about the availability. But if you're building a roster with a bunch of guys that are getting a year older, that's a concern. Also, starting pitching. Remember the vaunted rotation of Cole, Severino, Rodon, Montas, and oh gosh, who am I forgetting? Oh, Nestor Cortez. Out of 162 games, can you take a guess at how many of those 5 guys started?
Say maybe 60 or 70.
You're close. Well, and Garrett Cole had 33 of those. They had a total of 77.
77,
which means the other 4 had 44 combined.
Wow.
Montas made 1 appearance. Nestor, I forgot his exact number. But through all of that, all of their starters, the only guy with double-digit wins this year, Garrett Cole. Nobody else. So, like, I think a lot of people will focus on the offense, but this team was built on trying to improve the pitching. The bullpen was great. Bullpen finished with the best ERA in the league.
It did.
But
wow.
The starters, 3 point something. I don't remember what it was. But the starters, like, you got to look next year, and there's got to be a lot of changes made. I'm okay with Boone coming back. Looking at it, like, I know there's a lot of people that really want him fired, and I totally get that. But also, a lot of this wasn't his fault. Mm-hmm. Like, he hasn't had a left fielder to put out there in 3 years. He can't help that Giancarlo Stanton continues to get old and brittle. He can't help the right field wall in LA. Like, a lot of that wasn't really in his control.
Right.
And I think a lot of it falls on the way that this team was constructed. And unless they look at how they're going to make wholesale changes, like, we're looking at the same thing. This was literally the worst year in 30 years. They finished with 82 wins, which still winning record is tremendous.
Yeah.
Especially I heard some of the offensive numbers where like, this is the worst offense according to particular stats since 1912 when they had their worst record in franchise history.
Yeah.
So like, there's a lot of things that you can point to, but I think, like, looking at a potential philosophical change in how they approach stuff, I do have hope for this upcoming year. And I do think, like, because a guy like Aaron Judge has come out and said, like, we need to change how we're approaching stuff. And this is a guy that was the league MVP last year, still finished in the top 5 in home runs in the league this year, despite missing 2 months. Like, he's a guy that's shown that even though he's been excellent, he can even improve. So I think this Yankee team, I don't know. Part of me says that means Cashman has to go, but I don't know if they're going to do that. I think if Cashman is not the GM, then it would be like, you're doing something else in the organization. I don't think they'd ever fire him.
Right.
But if you bring in a new GM, bring back Boone for a year. I know a lot of times GMs like to bring in their own manager, but Boone has 1 more year left on his deal. It might be just like a make or break year for him anyway. So we'll see.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you said. I just think that I think that the Yankees still need a couple more bats. And I would go out and get at least 1 more start. You just can't rely on none of these pitchers to be healthy that they have. So I would get a good, maybe I'll get Jordan Montgomery back. or Chris, or go out and get Chris Bassett, or Taiwan Walker. Any of these New York pitchers, Zach Wheeler, who looked great last night. Any of these New York pitchers that we gave away between the Mets and Yankees is amazing. I think the Yankees will be back. I don't think that they'll make. I think they would have fired Boone by now if they were going to, and I don't think Cashman is as close to, I think, untouchable as there is any GM in the league right now. More because of his tenure. I think he's just embedded in that organization. And I think you're right. If they did ask him to step aside, they wouldn't fire him. They move him to another position. But he's got work to do definitely in this offseason. I'll be quick with the Mets. I'll start like you. And the bright spots, Pete Alonso, 46 homers, 118 RBIs. I know his batting average was low, but I'll take it. The guy was consistent. And he also missed a little bit of time, getting drilled in the wrist with a pitch. But he's a guy I hope they make a priority to keep long term in the offseason. It's not sounding like that. The other positive, Francisco Lindor, he wound up batting probably around 260 or so, but 30-30, and he played a flawless shortstop all year long, out there every single day. I got to give him his props. He's kind of become, the heart and soul of the team. Brandon Nimmo, I thought, had an excellent year as well. He stayed healthy, 25 homers, 24 or 25 homers. He's out there every day. I think he batted around 280. I know his average had dropped a bit. And then it came back up there towards the end. So I think those were some really good, good positives. I think the young guys, Alvarez, he hit 25, 26 home runs. There were a lot of times where, though, he looked a little lost still at the plate. I think he wore down as the season went on. He's never played that many games and caught that many games. So I think they'll manage that next year. Jeff McNeil had an excellent second half. And these guys are the core of this team. And some of the young guys did step up. Mauricio, I thought, played well. Mark Vientos, who looked in over his head for a good part of the year. I think, the last 3 weeks, he played extremely well. Brett Beatty looked a little bit better when he came back from the minors. He was overall, I thought, a disappointment. But the overall core of this team, I think, is solid and can be worthy of getting back into the postseason next year. I think McNeil will definitely bounce back. I think he's too good not to. And I think that they need to solve the Alonso thing and not have contract hanging over his head. They'll get another outfielder or two, I think. And because they did, deal Marcana and Tommy Pham. But Marte should be back healthy. If he's healthy, I think he'll be back to his old self. So those are some of the positives. I'm sorry, I left one out. The two big pitching positives were definitely Kodai Senga. He was great. It was a little bit inconsistent his first 5, maybe 8 starts. Corbin Carroll is definitely going to win Rookie of the Year with his 50 stolen bases, 25 home runs, and he'll deserve it. But any other year, Senga should get Rookie of the Year. He became their ace, especially in the second half. He was just really good. He lived up to the hype and the expectations. Jose Quintana also on that rotation. He didn't come back until mid-July, I think. But he was solid and consistent the rest of the year. So a couple of big pluses there. In the pitching, I don't really have any pluses out of the bullpen. I would say Adam Ottavino really redeemed himself. He had a rough first half, but he had a very good second half. There were a couple of still big spots that he didn't come up in. He's not a closer, and they used him in that spot after they dealt Robertson. He's more of a 7th, maybe 8th inning guy, and David Robinson would have been the big plus had he not got traded at the deadline. Overall, this was an enormously disappointing year, and it ended with them firing the manager I thought was the best manager they had since Terry Collins, and that's Buck Showalter. I just think that it's a mistake. A part of me understands it. Cohen has been chasing David Stearns for 2 years now, and he finally got him. Now, listen, the Brewers have had good success. He was the GM for 8 years. They've been in the postseason 5 of those 8 years, or they were in the postseason 5 of those 8 years. So, and he did that with a Brewer budget, which is not that big. And so he made some good deals, especially trading deadline in other years where he would pick up guys. I thought the Josh Hader trade was a disaster. I'm not sure why he made that one, but so part of me understands, though, you're bringing in a new president of operations. You want him to start fresh with a new manager. I think where I'm disappointed at is that Cohen never gave Stearns the chance. Sit down with Buck and see, where they're at. And then if they're not on the same table, look them in the eye and say, I don't think this partnership is going to work. Now, I like Craig Counsell. I always have. I liked him as a player. I thought he was very underrated as a player. And, he's got the winning hit in the 1997 World Series. No, no, that was Luis Gonzalez you're talking about, right? Because he was on that Diamondback team too.
He was in that rally though in the night.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was on that Diamondback team too. But he was with the Marlins when he got the winning hit in the World Series. I think he's been a good manager. Buck has a proven track record, and I would have given him at least one more year, or at least given Stearns the option. And so they've got to start there. And I don't know who you get aside from Counsell. I mean, Mike Scioscia is 65 years old. I looked that up. He it's been a long time since he won, as well. Bruce Bochy's not available. I mean, so some of these older veteran managers that we liked and rooted for, and it doesn't look like Bob Melvin is going to leave San Diego. He's a good manager, but they've chased him before. I don't know. I know Buck has never won a championship, but Buck has some pedigree. You know what I mean? Buck is a winner, and he has some good pedigree. I don't know who else you're gonna get now. Counsell might take the Brewers to the LCS or even the World Series. That would be an upset, and then probably the Brewers will say, we can't let this guy go, or the Mets might want him more. I don't know. I don't know where the Mets go here. I want to see with this team that should be ready, has a good balance of veterans and young players, to get a veteran manager though that's going to manage all that. I really think that that's what's needed, and I don't know who else would be out there, unless another name gets let go, or Terry Francona is obviously retiring. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I didn't like the move at all. I thought at least and part of, like I said, I don't like it, but I kind of understand it. But give the guy a chance. So it was a disappointing year. The Mets have to address pitching. I think they'll sign one of the free agents, probably Blake Snell. They'll have Diaz back, but they still need to fortify that bullpen. I mean, every day they were throwing out guys that I never heard of. It's like, when did this guy come up? Aside from Ottavino and maybe Drew Smith, couple of the guys that came up towards the end, there was really nobody that really stepped up, in that bullpen this year. And that really hurt them through the year. There were a lot of late leads that they blew. So the Mets, as well as the Yankees, I think have their work cut out for them. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with the Buck situation. Like, it kind of makes sense, but also kind of in the same vibe. Like, I don't think it was his fault. Like, unless you want to say like he built the culture and you think it's just a culture thing.
No.
But like, I don't know. This guy led the team to 101 wins last year.
Yeah, you don't become a bum overnight. That's what I don't get. We see that often though in sports, not just with Buck. I mean, he was the manager of the year last year. So I mean, I think you're right there, man. It wasn't his fault. I think that, listen, I think that the culture was probably a little bit toxic with Verlander and Scherzer because they seemed to play a lot looser after they were gone, and both of them had a lot to say on the way out. I mean, I think Verlander tried to take the high road, but Scherzer didn't. But But I think there was something to Verlander. I mean, he didn't deny this. I think there was something to that he had questioned the scouting system and said, hey, the Mets, they don't spend the money in the right places. They don't have, I don't have the advanced scouting that I need. There probably is something to that. I would have probably kept that behind closed doors. But I remember this. I'll tell you this real quick because I remembered this after he had said that he didn't think that the Mets had good leadership also on the field. And Tommy Pham kind of mentioned that as well. There was a time where Verlander was struggling in a game, and Francisco Lindor came over to the mound, and all he did was frown at him, sort of like Rodon the other day turned his back on the pitching coach. That's a bad thing. It doesn't matter if you turn your back on another player, I think, although I don't think anybody really noticed it, but I did because he frowned up when he saw him walking towards the mound like, what do you want? Now, to his defense, he's a veteran pitcher. Leave him alone, right? He's a Hall of Famer, Cy Young Award winner, World Series champion. Leave him alone. If the manager's not coming out, you leave him alone, And when Lindor started to talk, he just totally turned his back to him, So I think there was something to that, So I don't think it was Buck's fault though. I don't think Buck had anything to do with any of that. I think Buck probably noticed all that, tried to squash it, work it out, but there was a point where we're gonna get rid of these guys anyway. You know what I mean? So I agree with you. It wasn't Buck's fault.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see what happens too, because I think who ends up there will be very interesting.
Yeah.
Because there isn't really like a big name yet out there.
That is not.
Another one. I thought of another one, but I don't think it's a good option either. Joe Madden. He's still out there.
I like Joe Madden. He was a little disappointing with the Angels too. But that's a really interesting name I hadn't thought about. Now you had said in the opening that you had thought Buck might fit in somewhere else. Where would that be?
I think Buck might be more of a good front office guy.
Okay. Okay.
Because like the Yankees are very analytic heavy. And I feel like Buck kind of brings a little bit of yes, analytics are important, but like I get players, and I feel like that's what the Yankees would need.
Yeah.
I don't think he should be the GM, but like maybe like an advisor. But also maybe the Yankees are kind of leaning towards that direction because they have Omar Minaya there, as well as a couple other guys that are kind of a little bit more on like the old school, less analytics.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I think that, and he's done that before, right? I think he did that with Texas, as he was manager, and then was in their front office, or with Cleveland. I think one of those two. I know he worked in the front office before. That's an interesting concept. But you also, the Joe Madden, his name has not come up at all when I was reading the candidates, and that's actually a really good name. I mean, give him a phone call at least, right? And see if he's interested, and then bring him in. I mean, he's got to be at least probably in his mid-60s is my guess. But I mean, he did take two teams to the World Series, so I mean, he does have some pedigree there. That's a good one. I hadn't thought that. And Buck has never taken a team to the World Series. So
maybe not. He's 69.
Oh, so he's older than Buck. Oh wow. Okay.
So he might just want to like retire.
Yeah. And he hasn't gotten a call probably since, right? Since he left the Angels. He's never been involved in any rumors, right? Them saying, hey, let's bring in Joe Madden. 69. Yeah, that'd be hard. I mean, what Dusty Baker is doing is remarkable at his age. So, he's not that much younger than Dusty Baker at 69, no, don't get me wrong, 69 in general terms is not that old, but to be a baseball manager, I think it is, and I'm totally fine if the Mets get somebody young and that'll be here for a while, like a Craig Counsell. Buck still would have been better for the next year or two, I think. All right, hey, so let's briefly talk about playoffs. It was just game one. What are you thinking so far? I mean, that was just shameful, man. That Tampa Bay, what did they have, like 17,000 in the ballpark, or somebody over 13,000 empty seats? I can't. How does that happen?
Rays don't have fans, and they're going to get a new ballpark, but they still don't have fans.
I don't get it. It's almost like the Marlins, right? They can't fill that beautiful stadium down there. And I mean, what is it with Florida? We can't get people into a ball game?
I don't know. It's weird though. I guess my overall recap is I'm glad that Minnesota finally won a game.
Yes.
It's been since 2003. And now the Angels now hold the longest winless streak. They haven't won since the 2009 ALCS.
Wow. Wow.
So
Wow. Let me ask you about the Texas Rangers real quick, because I was stunned that they didn't win the division. You know why I was stunned? And then I read about this yesterday because as I'm turning around on Saturday night, because I think that game was on TV. I think it was on TV here in Seattle and Texas. And so I think I turned back. They celebrated like crazy, not knowing that whether they would win the division or not, just for getting in the playoffs. They were like, and then I saw, I think Sunday morning, or maybe it was Sunday when I came back, how the Astros also had clinched the playoff spot. And you had sent that to me late Saturday night or early Sunday morning. That both Houston and Texas are in, but we don't know the division. Houston, they're just high-fiving each other a little bit now. Houston's been there a lot, right, over the last few years. And then Texas goes out and they lay an egg on Sunday. And they're in an awful position. Now, they won yesterday, right? But I mean, they had to go and play Tampa in Tampa, which is not now a home field advantage, not a great one. But Texas, should they have not celebrated like that?
yeah, usually you can kind of tell when a team has been there and hasn't been there because,
Yeah.
like,
It's been a long time.
I mean, the Braves also when they won the division, they didn't really celebrate. They're like, and a lot of times you also hear it in like in the players, like they'll say, "Oh well, this is only the first step. We're still trying to make the World Series." Not like, "Oh my gosh, we made the playoffs." But I mean, I think they will end up winning here, which means that they'll probably play. Oh, I think they would play. They play Houston. I think they would play. Hold on, I'll have to look it up.
Yeah,
I don't want to misspeak here. But yeah, it's interesting.
I was stunned that they were the wild card team. So do you think the Twins will hold on here again, or do you think the Jays will win 2 games in a row?
I don't know. That's a toughie because the Twins have really good pitching, so I can totally see them pulling it off.
Yeah, yeah. Twins still hit a lot of home runs again this year, right? I don't think they broke a record like they did a year or two ago, but they still hit a lot of home runs. And they've got a lot of players that a lot of people I think have never heard of. So I'd like to see them move to the next level just so, they get a little airplay here and people kind of discover that they've got a pretty good team. How about the National League now? The Phillies handled the Marlins relatively easy last night. And then how about the Diamondbacks taking the game 1 upset on the Brewers?
I think that's probably the biggest up. Well, I guess technically the only upset of the day. Well, but either way, I think that's great, and I would love to see the Diamondbacks in the next round at least.
Yeah,
beating the Dodgers would be insane, but also like last year, there was a wild card team in the World Series.
Yeah,
2 wild card teams in the LCS.
Yeah,
so you never know.
Yeah. You listen. There's going to be a surprise team. The Phillies were a surprise team last year. They won't be the surprise team this year because I think people will expect them to go far. If they do hold on here against the Marlins, which I think they will, and I think it's a great accomplishment that the Marlins got in. First time they got in the COVID shortened season, but this is the first time in a long time that they've gotten in, just like in a long regular season. So I do think it's a great accomplishment. First year without Don Mattingly as their manager, right? So I don't know what that says. But I do think the Phils will win. Do you think the Braves are a little bit, do we really want to play these guys again? Because that's who they would play next.
Yeah, probably not. I think they would rather face the Marlins because of the experience factor.
Yeah.
But also the Braves, I think they can also go in and say, hey, when we won the World Series 2 years ago, we can do this again.
Yeah.
and we have a better team. We have a
Yeah.
healthy Acuna, so
Yeah. Phillies knocked them off last year though. So I don't know, man. I think the Braves might be like, come on, Florida. I mean Miami. Come on, Miami, rally a little bit. It's gonna be fun. I think it's good playoffs, really good teams in there. I like that I like this format actually. I like that four best teams in both leagues get to rest. I gotta tell you, if I'm your Yankees, and we'll jump to Damian Lillard for a few minutes here in a second. But if I'm your Yankees, I'm watching not one, not two, but three teams from my division in these play, which tells you that division is so competitive because the Red Sox weren't that far off either. And that division is so competitive. The Yankees really need to step it up, man. Let's say the Orioles wound up with the best record, man. It's unbelievable.
yeah, and like you look at the Orioles, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. Like their
No.
young guys are just going to get better.
Yeah.
Tampa always seems to figure it out, and who knows what Toronto is very up and down. So they can be good one year and then
Yeah.
awful the next. So you
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah. All right. Lots more to talk about with the playoffs. All right. So huge news comes across NBA. Believe it or not, training camp starts today, I believe. I think the Knicks are either today or yesterday even. And believe it or not, hockey season starts October 10th. Today's the 3rd, so exactly 1 week. Next Tuesday, hockey season. So this is the great time of year for sports, man. But the big trade, a couple of disgruntled guys. I was mentioning to you that they were still in place. Damian Lillard was one. James Harden is the other. And it sounds like Harden is going to report to training camp, and maybe just play and keep his mouth shut. But we'll see what happens with that. But Lillard to the Bucks, a blockbuster 3-team trade, and then eventually Drew Holiday, who we like, who we would have loved to have seen on the Knicks, goes to the Celtics. Which was a surprise that they traded their center, and Malcolm Brogdon, which was surprising. I didn't realize Brogdon wasn't happy in Boston. I read that after. I guess he wasn't happy with his playing time. But the Celtics have changed things up a little bit because they have earlier dealt Marcus Smart. They got Porzingis. But the big part of this trade was Lillard to the Bucks, teaming with Giannis now. What were your thoughts?
Bucks are the best team right now.
Wow. In the NBA or just in the
yeah.
East? In the NBA?
Well, at least in the East.
Okay.
NBA might, maybe, because we'll have to see how Denver plays out. But the Bucks, the Dame is a great player, great shooter. His weakness is defense. Giannis, his strength is defense, and he's also not the best closer. Like he's not a guy that you can say, here, take the ball and get a shot in the fourth quarter. But Dame is. So, like, they complement each other so well. It's crazy. So, I think that they have vaulted on top of the other two, like, big powerhouses. Philly is dysfunctional. I hope it implodes and Joel Embiid ends up on the Knicks. But then also, on all seriousness, I think the Celtics did get better by this trade, too. Drew Holiday is excellent.
I think so. I think that was huge for them because I thought that they had taken a big step backwards losing Marcus Smart. Not that Marcus Smart is the best player in the NBA. He's not. But when you talk about the heart and soul of a team, I couldn't think of another player that was more the heart and soul of a team than Marcus Smart was for the Celtics. I was really surprised when they let him go.
Yeah. And also like, yeah, because it really was. And like a lot of the Celtics fans were like really upset by it and everything.
Yeah.
But also I think they'll really love Drew Holiday because like he has like that defensive mindedness, and also he's a really good distributor. And I think that'll really help them, especially like I feel like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown tend to get tight at the end of games, and I think that'll kind of help calm them down a little bit.
Yeah, he's the same type of player as Marcus Smart is, only I think he's better than Marcus Smart. He's a better player still even at his age than Marcus, because I think he's a better shooter. I think he can defend just as well as Marcus Smart. And, Marcus Smart's one of the best defensive players in the league. I think Holiday's right there. And I agree with what you just said. I think he'll take a lot of pressure off Tatum and and Jaylen Brown at the end of games. What did you think about Phoenix getting finally ridding themselves of DeAndre Ayton, who's played well? It's just, they just don't like each other, him and the team,
Yeah, I think it was time. And also like he seemed like he was gonna be really upset, especially with their big three now, with Durant, Booker, and Bradley Beal. I don't think he was gonna see the ball as much as he wanted, and
No.
I think it would have hurt their chemistry. The Suns, though, getting back good role players to kind of deepen their bench a little bit is going to be something to look forward to as well.
Yeah, that I'm glad you said that, because that kind of gets overlooked in the trade, and you and I have talked about that. They got spanked by Denver because they didn't have any depth, and they didn't have any depth because they traded everybody for Kevin Durant. And so getting some depth in this trade, I think, is big for them. So Lillard, you're saying the Bucks are the number one team. Last question on the NBA. We'll jump to football. What does this do for Miami? Because Miami lost, and we'll do our basketball preview in a couple of weeks, obviously, but Miami lost some really good role players, but they held on to Tyler Hero, who was insulted that Portland said, yeah, you got to give me more than Tyler Hero if you want to get one of the best players in the NBA. So, and you saw he posted something that said, okay, Portland don't want me or whatever, But what does this do for Miami? Are they in line to repeat again? I don't know, man. They're such an unpredictable team. I mean, they were the number 8 seed, right? And they went all the way to the finals. But what does this do for Miami not getting Lillard?
It puts them in a very dire situation, because if it goes bad there, it could start to look a little ugly. Because especially it seemed like Jimmy Butler wanted him there. It also seemed like Dame wanted to go there. I think Dame will be fine. Like he's like Portland, Milwaukee, kind of similar type of markets.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, I don't know, if it goes bad, it's going to be hard to overcome this time in the East. Like,
yeah,
the Celtics will be better. Maybe, well, definitely the Bucks, but also maybe Philly, depending on what happens with James Harden.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Knicks have another year under their belt.
Knicks would be better. The Knicks
You
would
got
be
the Cavs too, although Cavs, it's looking a little weird with Donovan Mitchell. That could be another podcast thing, but
yeah.
I don't know.
I'd be surprised if he gets traded, but that might happen. So Gabe Vincent, I think, went to the Lakers, and Strus went to the Cavs, didn't he?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. I mean, those guys were money in the playoffs, and and every time the Knicks played them in the regular season, they were as well. So that's going to be interesting. We'll have some fun with the NBA in a couple of weeks, and we'll do a full preview there. All right. The Giants play. Let's jump to the NFL. I was more disappointed in the Giants than I was in the Jets this week, and obviously I'm a Jet fan. I thought that Zach Wilson played extremely well. I thought that the defense played well. I just think that Patrick Mahomes is just the best player in the world right now. And that was the big difference in that game. I didn't think the Chiefs played that great. I thought the Jets took them a little bit out of their game. But the Giants against the Seahawks, I was very disappointed. I thought the Giants, and I don't mean I'd never put your team down, man, but I didn't like the effort. I thought that they looked lost. I think that Daniel I mean, for that offensive line to give up 10 sacks to the Seahawks are not the 85 Bears, you know what I mean? And I'm not knocking the Seahawks, they're a good team. But 49ers are a much better team, and they played better against the 49ers. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? What happened with the Giants?
I don't know. Part of me says, yes, things might look a little different with Saquon healthy, but I don't know. Daniel Jones looks like he did previous to last year. They seem like they weren't really prepared, which I don't know how much of that is on the coaching. It looked like the defense should be a little bit better. I mean, they didn't play awful, but take out the Arizona game, this team has scored 15 points in 14 quarters.
That's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and most of those were in prime time. So, like, they've played 3 primetime games, and Daniel Jones, I don't think he scored a touchdown in his 0-3. Like, it's just, at this point, I'm like, okay, so we're stuck with this guy for at least the next 2 years, and I don't know what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got nothing.
I don't either. I was very, very surprised. I think they need Barkley back, but I thought that this offensive line was their problem. I mean, because this is like 3-4 years ago. I thought the offensive line stuff was solved over these last few years, and maybe that was an aberration, but their offensive line didn't have a great game against the Niners either. And they've got to be able to put some points on the board while they have a good defense. That's it. It's a good defense with one great player, I think. They've got 1 or 2 playmakers, I think, in their secondary as well. But it's not like they have rushers that are just all world. I mean, Leonard Williams, I think, is really good, but and Thibodeau doesn't even look like himself like he did last year. He almost had that interception, which would have changed the game because he would have went in for a touchdown if he had held on to that. But for Seattle to dominate, the way they did, that to me was alarming. I would have expected, when the Chiefs-Jets started, I texted you, I was like, oh no, after the first quarter. And then it's 17-0. And I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be a long night. And but yet the Jets, made the nice comeback, and they presented themselves well. We needed a win. Hopefully we'll get one this week against Denver. But Denver's got some confidence now that they had that miraculous comeback against the Bears, who stink. By the way, I shouldn't be saying that on positive tip, but boy, oh boy, the Bears are so disappointing. But Giants against the Dolphins. What are you thinking this week?
Let's not give up 70.
That's right. It's a pretty high-powered offense, right? That they're going to be going. They're probably going against. I won't say best wide receiver in the league, because I think that Metcalf on Seattle has got to be one of the best. But oh my gosh, they've got the Dolphins have 2 of the best wide receivers, I think, in the league. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. But yeah, like, to me, it's like, let's just not get embarrassed again.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones needs to show me that he's got something, because so far I haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
Aside from like the second half against the hapless Cardinals.
Yeah. All right. We'll leave it there, man. We just we got to pray for better football here for the New York teams. I'll ask you this though. I settle in. It was a long day on Saturday and Sunday, a lot of work to do, and settle in. And I'm thinking, okay, this is my dream. I love these 425 games. I have no rooting interest in. 2 great teams. Let's sit down. Let's do it. New England at Dallas. And it's not New England of 2-3 years ago, but I'm like, the Patriots are still pretty good, right? Oh my gosh, I was out of that game by halftime. I was like, come on, I got to go do something else, 38-3 or whatever. So, Mac Jones is also having a really, really tough time.
Yeah, I think Mac Jones is looking like he's on his way out too. By the way, also, I had worst ever loss in the Belichick era. So
yeah,
that's crazy.
You read Belichick's lips too. He said, "I'm taking you out."
Yeah.
Real quick though, Cleveland laid an egg this week. And why was that? I think you had sent me one of the reasons why.
Yeah, it might just be Deshaun Watson was hurt. Also, the Ravens are good, but yeah, he was kind of like a last-minute scratch. So I think that kind of threw everything off. They have a bye this week, which is really early for a bye week,
yeah, very early.
But also it'll give them time. Hopefully Deshaun Watson will be healthy and good to go. So
yeah. And then you had told me how Joe Burrow also is not healthy, because I was like, hey, why did Tennessee beat them 27-3 or something like that?
Yeah, he just hasn't looked 100% yet.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah.
And also, like, not even just like physically, but also like he didn't have a training camp. So
Yeah.
that could also be part of it too.
Yeah. All right. Listen, the big game begins and ends on Sunday night. Dallas at San Francisco. Your thoughts?
I think San Francisco's got the edge. Brock Purdy still hasn't lost a game that he didn't get hurt in. So that to me is still crazy.
He's been amazing, man. And McCaffrey is like all world now that he's gone to this team. He was very good before, right, in Carolina, but now he's like unbelievable. I mean, it's hard to find a weakness with the 49ers because their defense has been just unbelievable as well. But Dallas looked really, really good. I know it was the Patriots, and the Patriots have some issues now. We could clearly see that. But I think that's going to be, I mean, that shapes up to be a great matchup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Sunday night. All right. You ready to get to some inspiration?
Yeah, I don't have anything this week. Or
Okay.
at least I didn't prepare anything. So
No worries.
take it away.
I got two real quick. Actually, they kind of tie into one. My inspiration this week is you and I have strong ties to New England. I think that while we don't like the sports teams, right? We root hard against them. That part of the country is just a special part of the country that you and I, you from going to school and me from going up there on business a lot over the years, kind of became a second home to both of us. And this past week, they lost two really big figures. They lost Russ Francis, who was a tight end for the Patriots, and they lost Tim Wakefield. Let me talk about Russ Francis for a few minutes. They lost him in a plane crash in Lake Placid, New York. Russ Francis played 8 years with the Pats. He was a tight end back in the era where the tight end started to really become good. I thought his career was a little overshadowed by Kellen Winslow. Kellen Winslow, the first one, not the second one. They played in the same era. Ozzie Newsome. Is he still the GM in Baltimore? I'm not sure. But he was a tight end for the Browns for a long time, was great. Dave Casper was a tight end for the Raiders. He was great. Russ Francis was right there. It may not sound like a lot before a tight end back then. It was nothing for him to average 40, 45 catches a year, over 1,000 yards. He came out of college as like this all-world tight end. He definitely lived up to the hype. He got into a contract dispute with the Pats, and he retired for a full year, sat out a full year. And then the 49ers was smart enough to scoop him up, paid him what he wanted to. And he played his last 6 years with the 49ers, wound up winning a championship with Joe Montana. And the Niners was a big part of that team in 1982. So definitely missed by New England. Folks will know him extremely well, especially if you're of my age and even a little bit younger, because he played, mostly in the 70s and 80s. Tim Wakefield. Is there a guy, I don't know, maybe Wade Boggs is one of them, but is there a guy that played such a role in the Red Sox Yankees, rivalry in the thousands like Tim Wakefield? When you think about him giving up the Aaron Boone home run in 2003, and there's a reason why he kind of shook it off. I'll get to that in a second. But then him, and this is a nightmare for you, him pitching those 3 scoreless innings, calming the storm in Game 5 of the championship series of 2004. And then Big Papi gets the big base hit to win that game. And then it's like, we're going to a Game 6 in this series, but Wakefield played a big role in that. Wakefield pitched 17 years for the Red Sox, knuckleballer, which is a lost art now. He pitched only his first 2 years for the Pirates. But in the National League Championship Series in '92, Wakefield came up about midway through the season, and he had an 8-1 record in 9 starts and a 2.15 ERA. And then in the championship series, and a lot of people got on Jim Leyland's case for this, that he didn't save him for Game 7. He pitched 2 complete games, 2 complete game wins over the Braves, that year. But he didn't pitch him for Game 7 because he was the hot pitcher and he was a rookie. But a lot of people thought Leyland should have held him out in Game 6 and pitched him for Game 7, which the Braves won. He won the Roberto Clemente Award in 2010. Here's the other last thing about Tim Wakefield. Tim Wakefield was a Christian. And let me read, there was a great article that I saw today in Christianity Today about Tim Wakefield. Betsy Farmer knew that he was a Christian because he was very quiet about his faith. Betsy Farmer founded the Space Coast Early Intervention Center in Melbourne, Florida, which is Wakefield's hometown. On Sunday, Florida Today quoted Farmer as saying, "Tim led me to the Lord, and I'll never forget that." She said she texted Wakefield on Saturday that she was praying for him, and he responded with a heart emoji. And as we know, he died the next day. While I'm disappointed, this is the writer saying this, while I'm disappointed, many are neglecting to mention his faith. This says something significant about the way Wakefield, as a public figure, approached Christianity in an age of empty virtue, signaling and flashing displays of religiosity. That is, while Wakefield privately influenced many with his faith, religion was not something he made a big show of publicly. And isn't that the way we're supposed to be, right? That year, Wakefield told me about his coming to faith in Christ and the effect it had on him. Before I had worked hard, I wasn't at ease. Now, in a lot of tough situations, knowing that God is gracious, regardless of my performance, helps me control my frustrations. He continued, "The gospel has given me inner peace. I still have a lot to learn, but there is that inner peace." He needed that gospel in 1994 when the Pirates gave up on him, and he remembered it in 1995 when the Red Sox signed him and the knuckleball worked again. Wakefield won 16 games that year, and he was the American League's Comeback Player of the Year. In 2005, the Boston Globe ran a feature about Wakefield and a dozen other players under the headline, "Faith Binds Many Socks." Evangelical Christians give sports a spiritual context. Reporter Bob Holler quoted Wakefield as saying he's accepted Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. It's so easy to be thankful when you're on top of your game and everything is going right. But when I gave up the home run to Aaron Boone, I had to be thankful for that too. Wakefield was not as vocal about his faith as some other players are, but those who covered the Red Sox or those who asked definitely knew about it. I didn't know about it until I saw this article today. There was always something special about Tim Wakefield. He always kept things in perspective, it seemed like. When he gave up that home run, he slowly walked off the mound, disappointed, but he stayed. I remember for interviews after, and he didn't make any excuses. He made a bad pitch. The ball was right over the plate, and Aaron Boone got it. But it's not a surprise to me that I read that he's a man of faith. Definitely big losses up in the New England area this week with Russ Francis and Tim Wakefield.
Definitely. I didn't know anything about how his faith was, and imagine your story of how you came to Christ was because Tim Wakefield told you about Jesus. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, imagine that. All right, bud. Big week coming up. Lots to talk about next week. Take us home.
This is Kenny, Squared End.
Kenny.
With Sports on the Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next week.
Absolutely.